The X Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
You doing that thing you do, breaking my heart into a million pieces, like you always do. And you don't mean to be cruel, you never even knew about the heart.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that, well, for the last 20 years, I've called the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction truly is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and our growing family of broadcast affiliates right across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Worldwide toll free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv at hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. December, geez, I'm skipping ahead of myself here. November the 27th is the next distribution day of the X Chronicles worldwide. So if you don't have a subscription, send us an email. We'll get it to you as fast as we can. And of course, for all the members of the X Zone Nation, well, you know where to go and read your online issues, don't you? Should I share it with the rest of the world? Why not? www.xchronicles-newspaper.com. According to my guest this hour, former Navy Commander Dave Stevens, the Mayans got the wrong date, but we're still facing disaster. We're going to be talking about the top 3 real threats to humanity and what we can do about them. Despite the mass hysteria, we all know that the world isn't really going to end on December the 21st. However, there are still plenty of ways that life as we know it could come to an end, an abrupt end, a chaotic end. My guest this hour is former Navy Commander Dave Stevens. We're going to be exploring with Dave the shocking truth about the top planetary threats and why these apocalypses are far more likely than any Mayan prophecy. The real doomsday scenarios aren't what we most people suspect. In fact, global warming, flooding, and super volcanoes don't even make the top 5. Joining me now is Commander Dave Stevens. He is the author of a fascinating new book that would make anybody smile if you bought it and put it under the Christmas tree. It's entitled Resurrect. Joining me now is Dave Stevens. And Dave, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Tell me, why do you think there's been so much hype about the end of the Mayan calendar, December the 21st, 2012, the galactic alignment, and then you've got the return of the famed and mystical planet Nibiru? Like, why did people actually take this seriously?
I think it's probably human psychology. I read an article once in Scientific American that said, we as humans want to be significant, and we always believe that we must be alive during that one period in time when everything comes to an end.
So we're kind of, so if we're smucked away in an apocalyptic scenario, this is what most humans want?
You know, that's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
they've done surveys, and this actually kind of scared me. There's only a small percentage of the population that really thinks the world's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
But when they did a survey recently, and I'll have to track that down, but it was almost 30% of the population believes something significant was going to happen on December 21st. That's almost unfathomable, why people believe that. I mean, if you talk to anthropologists,
Mm-hmm.
they tell you the mines ran out of rock. They just ran out of rock. It was a calendar cycle. It was scheduled to end. But, I think they might have done us a teeny tiny favor
Mm-hmm.
by helping us think ahead, because there are some threats out there. They're not going to happen. I mean, if I'm wrong and the world does come to an end on the 21st, I'm willing to come back and make a public apology.
All right, you've got a deal. Dave, please stand by. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. This is going to be one heck of an hour, Exo Nation. Our special guest is former Navy Commander Dave Stevens. We're talking to Dave about his new book, Resurrection. His website is www.resurrecttrilogy.com, and the Commander and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean anything at all. The life I've left behind me is a cool room across the last line. From where I can return, where every step I took in faith betrayed me.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. Former Navy Commander Dave Stevens is my special guest this hour. We're talking about Dave's new book that is out called Resurrect. His website is www.resurrecttrilogy.com. Steve, what makes you kind of an expert or qualifies you to talk about apocalyptic disasters? And I don't mean to be sarcastic or crude when asking you that question, sir.
No, not at all. It's a question that I think more people need to ask. We accept too much information without credentials. I was a Navy fighter pilot.
Mm-hmm.
I was qualified to deliver nuclear weapons. I shouldn't laugh at that. I mean, that was a terrifying mission. I was a strike operations officer, planner for a Desert Storm, and I worked on classified weapon development programs. So I'm kind of a demolition expert. And it's not a little bit depressing, I guess, for a lot of the listeners. But at some point, I realized I might be able to apply some of that demolitions expertise to maybe protecting and saving. And my background is engineering and physics. I've got an engineering degree from Cornell and a master's in engineering from University of Michigan, with some post-grad work in astrophysics and human factors. And most of it, I think, is an understanding of statistics, which is absolutely essential when you're trying to rank or evaluate threats. But if I may, I part of it was as a young fighter pilot. You're immortal. I mean, we're all immortal when we're 20 years old. We're fearless. And a few years into the fleet, one of my close friends was killed in a crash, and that's when you suddenly become immortal. But at that point, I also realized, unless death hits you directly, you have a brush with it, or somebody that's close to you, it's not real. And I realized that was the same thing for societies. I think we tend to turn a blind eye to apocalyptic disasters just because they're not real. And in some cases, it's kind of a giggle factor. So I thought, what a way to pull this together. I love telling stories, so I try to take these technical papers, these science papers that are like a quarter equations and statistics, and turn them into a fun action-adventure thriller. And that's where the Resurrect Trilogy came from.
In your opinion, Dave, what are the top 3 threats that we really couldn't do anything about?
I use probabilistic risk analysis to try to figure this out, which is just a fancy word for the same science they use, insurance companies use to figure out your premiums. They look at consequence and risk. So my entire evaluation was built upon Okay, how likely and how bad? And I was just looking at the bad ones. I'm talking about the ones that could take out humanity or civilization, as you said at the opening. When I did that, I went through a whole passel of them, but it narrowed down to three that really had a probability and a consequence that was kind of frightening. The number 3 one was probably not a big surprise. It's global nuclear war, biological war. Shocking to me was that it came out as the number 3 threat.
Wow. What's the number 2 threat, sir?
The number 2 threat was probably the most controversial. It's artificial intelligence, and we tend to hear that and we think Terminator movies.
Mm-hmm.
The issue of artificial intelligence is and a lot of people say, well, we don't know that they'll ever become aware, they'll ever be conscious. We don't, but we can easily predict their growth. I mean, since the 1960s, Moore's law has been ironclad. Every 2 years, processing and memory power double, sometimes faster. I mean, all you have to do is look at that little cell phone in your hand, that smartphone. I mean, if you have a smartphone that's more than 2 years old, it's obsolete.
That's right.
And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to draw a line out and say, hey, what happens 20, 25, 30 years from now? They will have to have the same processing power and memory as a human brain. And if you take it out another 20 years, we're looking at potentially more processing power than the entire human race combined. So that's not too hard to calculate. However, there is, and I remember thinking, well, we got 25 years to figure this out. But there is a wild card, and it in fact does sit in the palm of your hand. Smartphones may have, kind of scarily, they may have the ability to change the equation.
How?
Think about this for a minute. A smartphone, and we're all impressed with how amazing they are, but if you looked at their IQ equivalent to biological creatures, they're about the same level as a lizard. Not very impressive. But in the next few years, we will soon be having billions of these smartphones around the globe, and they're all connected. And they're becoming more connected, kind of like the neurons in a human brain.
So could we actually then extrapolate and look at this as if the internet is the brain mass, and all these individual iPads and other handheld devices are the neuron connections?
It's quite possible. Now, the fallacy to this is there isn't any software that links all these things the way neurons are. It doesn't exist. So, this is not going to happen tomorrow. But certainly, the processing power of the internet, the smartphone, just the smartphones alone, if you took all that processing power and combined it, it would be far in excess of a human brain. So it's something that we need to at least be aware of and be thinking about. I mean, it would be kind of a bummer, you wake up in the morning and you give Siri your command, and Siri tells you what to do with it.
That would be something. It's scary. All right, so in your opinion, sir, what is the number 1 threat?
The number 1 threat. It's asteroids and comets, and I say that carefully because most people's reaction is, well, that's just a good movie plot. Some people would debate whether it's good or not, but it is a good movie plot. But it's a movie plot because of probability. And there's been research just in the last 5-10 years that have actually been rather frightening. I'll give you an example. And I go through all these research papers, these science and technical papers written by astrophysicists, and I would encourage people to read them, but they're painful. I mean, literally, a third equations and statistics. But I remember I got to the bottom of one of them. It was written by a gentleman named Dr. Bill. I got to think about this for a minute. UK astrophysicist. I'll figure out that name in a minute. But what he did was Napier. I'm sorry, Dr. Bill Napier. But at the bottom of this very heavily equation-laden paper was a statement that said 3 magnitude higher impact rate than current near-Earth object models, which is a pretty mellow statement until you realize what he's talking about. What he's suggesting is there may be 1,000 times more comets than we originally predicted, and that's the reason is they're called dark comets or extreme low albedo. But the B612 Foundation has told us that we've only found about 1% of the Earth orbit crossing asteroids.
Wow.
So between the two of that, and I mean, we probably found a lot of the big ones, but one the size of a football field would obliterate an entire city and its metropolitan area.
Now that's scary. And there's nothing we could actually do about it if we knew there was an incoming, because I really don't think that the powers of the world have actually gotten into a let me see, how can I best say it? They're not getting along as it is. I don't think that they could actually pull together the resources that would be required in such a short period of time to actually try and destroy a comet. Or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right, and that was kind of the purpose. I thought if I can write a fun action adventure, a novel, but it's based heavily on science, and I've got some endorsements from Dr. Carolyn Shoemaker. She's found the most comets and asteroids. A couple astronauts, Dr. Joe Vaverka, and Dr. Bill Napier. So I used their brains. I'm not smart enough. I'm not an astrophysicist, but I used their brains. They helped check out over my numbers. Obviously, it is fiction, but it is based on real science. So you think if we can get enough shock value going, you're absolutely right. There is no international effort. If we found an asteroid or a comet that's going to hit us 10, 20 years in the future, we could put together something. We don't have to push it very hard. We just need to nudge it. But if we find something 2 years away, we're toast unless we do something. So first know your enemy.
Bruce Willis isn't around to take that crew up and destroy the asteroid, is he? It's scary to think that we think we're so secure, so protected on this little planet of ours, and yet we can be smucked out of the time-space race at any given time, and we really can't do anything about it.
No, and there are some organizations. I'm not a survivalist. I'm not a doomsdayer.
Right.
I believe there are things that we can do about it. There's a great new nonprofit called the B612 Foundation. A friend of mine, former astronaut Dr. Ed Liu, he's the CEO. We've been talking and we're doing a little partnering. And in fact, I'm going to be donating some of the proceeds from the book, the profits from the book, to help that foundation.
Wow.
But what he's doing is he got tired of that. He was an astronaut and he realized that the government wasn't taking action or wasn't taking the threat seriously. So he's created a foundation with a intent to put up an infrared telescope around, I believe it's near the orbit of Venus, that's going to map out all the asteroids. He believes he can literally map out the vast majority of the asteroids within a few years with this thing, and it's about $150 million, so it's doable. So there are people out there actually. We can't stop an asteroid until we know there's one out there. First, we got to find them. So that's step one. Comets are a little more complicated because they're further out. They're outside of the solar system. Unlike 2 million asteroids, there are hundreds of billions of cometary fragments. So that's the next step. But one step at a time. First, we got to find the little suckers.
Whose jurisdiction is it to monitor the approaching comets or asteroids? Is it NASA, or is it a different division of the government, or is it left up to the public sector like your friend?
That's a good question. I don't know, and I could be wrong, but I don't know that anybody has stepped up and said, we'll take responsibility. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of astrophysicists out there who are working on shoestring budgets that are trying to map asteroids and comets. They're doing a great job, but they don't. The problem with asteroids is they're not very bright. I mean, as in reflective. They're cold and dark. You need something out there that can pick them up, like an infrared telescope. And infrared doesn't work well inside of the Earth's atmosphere, so you really need a space telescope.
All right, please stand by, Dave. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Dave Stevens is our special guest. He's the author of a book that should be on everyone's Christmas list. It's entitled Resurrect. His website is www.resurrecttrilogy.com. That's resurrecttrilogy.com. And Dave and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Whatever you do, don't go away. That's unless we tell you a comet's coming or an asteroid. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035. Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Try to understand, try to understand, try to understand. I'm a magic man.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. The theme from Top Gun by Van Halen is a very appropriate song for this hour. Our guest is former Navy Commander Dave Stevens, and we're talking to Dave this hour about his new book entitled Resurrect. Now, in the first two segments of the show, we talked about the 3 real threats to humanity and what we can do about them. The first threat, number 3, was nuclear or biological war, and why it's actually among the least of our worries. Threat number 2, artificial intelligence, how your smartphone could eventually turn the tables on humanity. And threat number 1, comets and asteroids, why a comet is more likely to kill you than a shark attack, snake bite, or lightning strike. Dave Stevens' website is www.resurrecttrilogy.com. That's www.resurrecttrilogy.com. And Dave, you're part of an organization, as we touched on very briefly on the other side of the news, entitled the B612 Foundation. Now, can you tell us a little bit more details about that organization and how it was founded and what its goal is? And here's my main question to you on that. There's about 46,000 questions in one. Why isn't the government funding it?
That's a great question. Dr. Ed Lu, as we said, former astronaut and CEO, what I think he decided to do is step outside of the government and fund this himself. Now, what their program is, and it is brilliant, and you talked about the statistics.
Yes.
Right now it's about a 1 in 50,000 chance of being killed by a comet or asteroid. And you think that's a pretty high number, not likely. But lightning is 1 in 35,000, and flood is 1 in 500,000. So this is a real threat. And recent research is suggesting the threat may actually be much higher. The stats may be even worse. But what Dr. Ed Lu and the B612 Foundation are doing, and the reason why I'm donating some of the proceeds from the book for that, is because they're planning on putting up an infrared telescope, an IR telescope in orbit out around Venus, and the whole idea is that they believe that within a matter of a couple of years, they will be able to track the vast majority of Earth orbit crossing asteroids. You think exactly. You asked that question. I wish I had an answer. Why aren't we funding it? Why isn't there even an international effort to fund it? So we have some very brave souls stepping out. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of astrophysicists working on shoestring budgets right now to try to track these things. They're working very hard, but they can't see out of the atmosphere very well. You really need an IR telescope, and IR works best in space. So that's step 1, infrared. Now, a lot of the comets are also a threat, and that's a whole different ball of wax. Asteroids, I think most people understand. Comets, actually, there's only about 2 million asteroids in the asteroid belt, but there are hundreds of billions of cometary fragments that exist outside of the solar system. And the work of I mentioned Dr. Bill Napier. Most of astrophysicists look at comets and they go, there aren't enough of them out there. We don't see enough of them. There should be thousands more, but we don't see them, so they must not exist. Well, he took a different tact and said, you know what? If you take a dirty snowball, which is the usual explanation for a comet, and gravel, rocks, debris, and ice, and you run it around the outside of the sun, we're going to burn off most of the ice, and what's left? What you have is the dirty part, and they're referred to as extreme low albedo comets. That's a fancy name for saying that they have a surface reflectivity about the same as fresh asphalt. Still theory, except that there was a comet called Araki-Alcock, quite a tongue twister, but in the 1980s it came within 3 million miles of the Earth. It was 5 miles wide. We didn't see it until it was 2 weeks from closest approach because it was that dark. So the threat is very real. And it's a whole nother a whole nother level of effort to try to find and track these. But if we can track them, if we can find them, then we can do something about them.
Well, whose responsibility is it right now to track these asteroids and comet? Does it fall under the jurisdiction of NASA, or does it fall under the jurisdiction of Air Space Command?
That's a good question. I think most people would say an international effort. It is complicated by the fact that we can't put, and understandably, nuclear weapons in orbit. So it would definitely have to be a massive international effort. And that is part of the purpose of creating a trilogy, a fiction trilogy, to help educate, to increase awareness while entertaining. Get this in our mind, so we can actually maybe create a joint effort.
I understand that during the presidency of Ronald Reagan, he actually looked at a Star Wars defense system. Now, is it possible that even though there are those who believe it never happened, that it actually did happen? And if it did happen, if the comet or asteroids were to come within close proximity of Earth, would the nuclear weapons, if they are up there, could be pointed at the incoming and try to either deflect it or destroy it before it came into Earth's atmosphere?
It is possible. That's the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. There are a lot more elegant ways to deflect a comet or asteroid. In the last analysis, that may be all we have left. But the problem with that is, even if you're successful in sending out a nuke, now keep in mind the rocket that would be required to go meet a comet or asteroid inbound is huge. So it isn't just a question of nuclear warheads. You need a giant rocket to push that warhead. You may have just created a new problem. Instead of having a rifle shot, you've created a shotgun blast, because it's going to break into a lot of fragments, and many of those fragments are still going to hit the Earth.
How do you think this scenario would play out? Now, I'm asking you as the expert. Something is viewed by let's say an amateur astronomer. It's given to the Griffith Observatory. They see it and deem it as, my God, we're going to get schmucked on this planet by this object. In your experience and in your estimation, how would the chain of events follow from that point on?
That's a good one. I suspect if it appears in the scientific community first, because multiple telescopes can see it, it would probably become public knowledge. But the question becomes, how far out? I mean, if we identify something that's in an orbit that will cross us in 10 years, it's fine. I mean, we have time to do something about it. If we identify it and it's only a year or 2 years or 6 months out, different question. Then the question becomes, do you even release that to the public if it's truly a planet killer?
I can just see the mass hysteria if the information was released to the public. Like, crime would be on an upswing overnight. It would just be horrific.
It would be a nightmare, and that's why, statistically, the chances that we're going to get smoked tomorrow or next month or next year are pretty small. But it is going to happen. I mean, if you think about it, about every 30 million to 60 million years, the life gets the reset button pushed. We have a mass extinction roughly on that cycle. Wouldn't it be cool if, for the first time in the history of life on Earth, a species, namely the imperfect us, is in a position where we could actually do something about it, and who knows, maybe pay back all of, or at least do a little bit of payback for all the species that we've already taken out, because an asteroid makes us look like a joke. We take out thousands or millions of species.
Mm-hmm.
An asteroid or comet could take out 90% of the life on Earth.
Exonation, our special guest this hour is Commander Dave Stevens. He's a former Navy commander. His website is www.resurrecttrilogy.com, and the name of his book is called Resurrect. When we look at the possibilities of this happening, I know there's been a number of movies that Hollywood has put together, and the only one I can think of is the one where Bruce Willis was part of the crew and they landed on this asteroid. Was it an asteroid? Yeah, it had to be an asteroid, right? And they were using atomic weapons to blow it up or shear it off of Earth's path. I often wonder how much of these movies is based on a little bit of knowledge compared to totally fiction.
That movie actually did have a lot of science in it. However, to make it realistic and fit, that would be a multi-month, multi-year mission. To make it fit in, they had to take some liberties.
Yeah.
So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But certainly planting a nuke far enough out is possible. However, as far out as they planted the nuke, we probably would have gotten clobbered anyway. But the idea at least is based, as they say, based in fact.
How can the government not get involved in funding a project like B612 Foundation when these people, all right, they've separated from NASA and they're doing this on their own, but they're providing an invaluable service to humanity and mankind? Like, shouldn't we, it only makes sense to chip in and make it happen?
It does, but it's the classic government is us. We are the people. And as long as we don't think it's a threat, as long as we're not that concerned about it, nobody's going to be calling up their congressman and demanding that we spend some time. I think there's more money spent in research on toenail fungus than comets and asteroids. And that's part of what we do, of what you do and what I do,
Right.
to try to get this out as a real threat so that people take an interest and realize it's not just a fun movie plot.
So they put these, all right, so they get this satellite to do the imaging. Once they have all that data, what's the next step?
Well, if we can identify an asteroid far enough out, and probably likely, it could be 10, 15, 20 years from impact, it's actually not that hard. All you have to do is give it a little nudge. You have to slow it down by a matter of millimeters per second if you do it far enough out, and then it just misses us because Earth is whipping at an incredible pace. I forgot what it was, 6,000 kilometers. I don't want to say it because I'll screw it up. But all you have to do is slow down the comet or asteroid so that the Earth isn't there when it arrives, which isn't too hard. If it's 6 months out or a year out or 2 years out, then you have to take some Herculean efforts. And in the book, we actually propose a potential solution, one of several, based on real physics. It can be done, but now we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar international effort, not just a NASA, send something out there and give it a nudge.
Wow, so it's like playing galactic pool.
That's a good analogy.
All right, so here you are, a former Navy commander. We used Top Gun as an intro.
I actually knew some people who flew those sequences.
I was just going to ask you. You must be psychic.
That was about my time frame.
How close to real was Top Gun? Like, is there a Top Gun school? Do they actually go there and chase MiGs all over the place?
There actually is. It's been changed a little bit since the movie came out. Top Gun was a love story, set in that background. But it's Fighter Weapons Employment School. I'm actually a graduate of Strike Fighter Weapons Employment School, which we jokingly called Top Bomb, but combines Top Gun and Top Bomb together. It just doesn't have the same ring, does it?
Not really.
But yes, it does exist, and it's kind of funny. Not only are you taught fighter tactics, but you're actually taught how to be a teacher, how to go back and teach that to your fellow students. Which I of course they're not going to cover that in the movie because it's not very exciting. But like anything else, you're trying to educate, you're trying to teach.
That's wonderful. What was it like taking off from an aircraft carrier? We see where the flight deck and the air boss, the guy gives a signal, he salutes and he ducks, and the jet takes off right over his head. What's that like when you're taking off and you're being catapulted into space?
It is a total rush. If you've ever been on what they call a linear accelerator, a linear acceleration roller coaster, the ones that shoot you out at high speed, that's exactly what it feels like. I got catapulted off one time when the air boss, actually the captain of the ship, came up and said, "Hey, do you see that tanker there on the horizon at about 2 o'clock? These giant tankers would often assume everybody else is going to get out of their way, and an aircraft carrier doing flight ops has the right of way, according to the laws of the sea." Well, we were on a collision course many miles out, so the captain said, "Hey, let them know we're here," which of course is license to steal.
All right, now hold on here. We've got to do a little bit of a cliffhanger here. I've got to take a commercial break. Please stand by. Dave, great having you with us here in the X Zone. X Zone Nation, Dave Stevens is our special guest. He's the author of Resurrect. His website, www.resurrecttrilogy.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go away. Oh, there you go. The first case of, what is it? What is that? What did they do? Don't ask, don't tell? Yeah, who knows, eh? Before we went to the commercial break, here you are. You're still sitting on the deck of the carrier waiting to be catapulted off. You get the signal, you take off. What happens?
Well, the captain never talks to you, so when he talks, everybody got quiet. They were all wishing they were on the catapult at that time. You fire off. In this case, normally you climb out, so I just sucked up the gear and stayed at 50 feet, got as fast as I could, and flew right in front of the windows, the bridge windows of the tanker. They did turn.
So is that like Tom Cruise did a number of times that got him into trouble when he did a flyby?
Exactly, except this one was awesome.
Unreal. You know what? We have to have you back on the show, and what I'd like to do is I'd also like to get the people from the B612 Foundation on as well with you, Dave, because this is a message that we have to get out there. And I think we have to be serious about it and let the people know what the truth actually is. So if that works for you, that works for me.
That would be fantastic. And for those out there, and I'm an engineer, who want more data, on the website we do have the links to the scientific papers that back up some of this, because I know that's important for a lot of us. That's on the Resurrect Trilogy website. As you mentioned, we're optioned for a movie by producer Fred Miller, who has some Academy Award-nominated movies. And in fact, they're about to release When Angels Sing. I think that's going to be released overseas first, with starring Harry Connick Jr., and I think it'll be here in 2013. But that's pretty exciting to have a producer pursuing the story, and I think that will help us get our message out as well, because not everybody reads.
What can I say except thank you so much for being with us tonight and for sharing your story, for sharing your experiences. And quickly, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can buy your book.
The book is for sale pretty much everywhere. If they buy it through the resurrectedtrilogy.com website, which links to Amazon, they'll be into a drawing for free Kindle opportunity to have a character named after them, and if this goes to a movie, to be invited on the set for the filming.
Oh, that sounds great. Dave, once again, thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone.
Thank you very much. It was an awesome program, and I really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot, my friend. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour has been Tom Cruise. No, wait a minute. No. It's Commander Dave Stevens. He's a former Navy commander, and he's the author of Resurrect. And his website is www.resurrecttrilogy.com. That's www.resurrecttrilogy.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour, as the X Zone does continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. The X Zone archives are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year for the past 90 days at www.xzonepodcast.com and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And the X Chronicles newspaper hits the shelves on November the 27th. Don't go away. We'll be back after the news.